robotic voice and oral sound effects are pretty hilarious, even at face value. And if you've seen a few kung fu movies like I have, you quickly realize Zuck is being made into this old 70s kung fu villain. He speaks in a weird over-the-top manner, like he doesn't get English, with his lips not matching the voiceover, which is obviously dumb. He also constantly tries to attack people with his fighting style. I think it's easy to say this is South Park razzing Zuckerberg for his stilted and robotic public appearances. That and it's a sort of mashup for this episode overall, with the heroes and villains. The boys are playing the superheroes in the style of Marvel and DC comic books and movies, while Zuckerberg is doing a retro, over-the-top kung fu villain. It's a pretty hilarious juxtaposition. Meanwhile, the boys try and figure out why their old fans are unfollowing them. As the cool questions a little boy,
demonic threat reduced by 50%.
Bring up a certain Hollywood producer who's fallen from grace.
Wilson Aubrey? Yeah, it's us, your heroes, Cuban friends. We're just wondering why you stopped following us on Instagram.
Because you victimize innocent people and poop in little girls' mouths.
That's not true, Wilson. We're Cuban friends, not Harvey Weinstein.
This also brings up a good point for the real world. People need to start thinking for themselves again. Stop believing everything you read online or watching the news, because it's just too easy to lie and manipulate the media nowadays. You'd be surprised how many people still don't know that right now. After another scene with Zuckerberg acting like a weird, creepy robot, the boys run into problems with lies on Facebook again. This time they're calling Netflix, who has operators answering their phones in the funniest way.
Netflix or Greenlit? Who am I speaking with?
Greenlighting shows before they even know who they're talking to? Classic. Unfortunately though, when Carmen reveals at the last second that their show is about Coon and friends, the Netflix guy finally has to pass on the show for the first time, since he heard that Coon stabbed Jessica Alba on the news, which was really just a silly fake post on Facebook. In the end, we find out Zuckerberg is working with Chaos, and the boys come up with a unique plan to take them all down. They decide to give the Zuck a taste of his own medicine. After they lure Mark into a real physical fight, the Coon reveals the whole scene has been broadcast on Facebook Live. In a public video of Zuckerberg beating up children, let alone a black, disabled, and Jewish one, that's not too good for his public persona. So, to save face, Zuckerberg quickly shuts down Facebook, which then indirectly ends Professor Chaos's evil plan.
We're these kids trying to have our voices heard from black, handicapped, and Jewish fans. Cut down on our pride by Mark Zuckerberg.
But hold on, that's not true.
Facebook says it's true.
In the final two follow-up scenes, first Butter's dad takes him to Russia, probably. Apparently Butter's got this fake news idea from Putin, and South Park shows pretty much the most believable representation of what happened with Russia in last year's election. They use Facebook and other media in legal ways to create misinformation, banking on people just believing everything they see and read. And sure, they didn't break any laws or actually cheat the votes or anything, but what they did was still wrong. So Butter's dad decides to ground his son, and Putin, I guess. The last scene shows the boys back in their war room. They've solved their Facebook problem, but now there's an internal rift, an argument over which way to take their franchise plan, which creates a sort of civil war between our heroes. With the episode ending there, it assumes this story will continue in the upcoming video game, The Fractured Butthole, an obvious play on words. I personally can't wait to play it, but you know me, I'm a pretty big South Park fanboy, so I'm really biased on this. As for this episode, I think it was another solid addition to the season. Sure, there was a lot more going on than usual, but that appears to be a theme for this season. These new episodes have layers upon layers. They've got direct, topical references and subtle cultural influences. Sometimes it's hard to see everything that's going on, especially in the first viewing. But hey, I think that's something good. This makes the episodes this season more rewatchable than ever. What do you guys think? Is the upcoming Coon and Friends video game gonna be the shit? Was the Mark Zuckerberg character hard to understand? Or was it a total home run and hilarious? And what do you think South Park will cover next week? For watching more bullshit, leave it in the caption for the positive episode. Until next time, stay classy. Again, Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about South Park again. This time it's the second episode of season 21 called Put It Down, where Trey and Matt try to tackle President Trump again, this time targeting his liberal use of Twitter, especially
Demonic threat reduced by 50%.
Very interesting and funny documentary called I put a link to it in the description below if you guys like it. But now back to this week's episode. Like last week, we're going to go over the plot, the references, and what I thought was funny about it. Before I'm wanting to add, what are you worried about that? Okay, well, things start off this episode with the return of PC Principal, a fan favorite from the last two seasons. Great to have him back, even if it's just in an ancillary support character here. He really comes to the forefront of his journey, and that rhyme was a plan. Tweak is the weird and character. This time, Tweak is really turned up to the blind council is always watching into overdrive, and that's the current hysteria about North Korea, them testing bombs and all that drama that's been going on in the real world. And particularly for Tweak, he's really concerned about Trump's tweets about this, which appear to be antagonizing Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader. And this has got Tweak real worried, and he chooses to express this anxious energy of his in a little spastic song at the school's assembly. Check it out. Now, what I take away from this initial setup is Tweak is representing the paranoid people in America who really do worry about the threat of North Korea. And maybe they should, but I don't think they'll ever really be able to attack the United States. Not without being stopped by us or China first. And regardless, there's certainly people like Tweak in America who get riled up by all this. Seeing this in the news and on Twitter, and perhaps things are made worse by Trump and his cocky and overconfident tweeting. But before we get to the Trump stuff too much, I will say South Park handles their criticisms and mockery of him pretty nicely. Even the most avid Trump supporters can see the president is a bit over the top with his tweeting sometimes. And I think only the most stark, defensive, and humorless Trump supporters would find these jokes offensive, or anything like that. But it's still early in the episode. Let's see where this goes. The next scene, we see the boys at lunch, following the assembly. Here they set up the kids' relationships, which get expanded upon later. We discover Craig is still dating Tweak, which is a callback to a season 19 episode, where the girls in class draw shipping pictures of Craig and Tweak, putting them in this fantasy relationship together, which gets so big at school, the boys decide it's easier just to go along with it, despite not necessarily being a gay couple, for reals. Well, now it's 2 years later, and Tweak and Craig are still a thing. Whether it's platonic or romantic is kind of left up in the air for the audience. The other relationship brought back is Cartman and Heidi, who we thought broke up last episode, but apparently, according to Cartman, Heidi said she was going to commit suicide if he didn't take her back. So he did, but in reality, Cartman was the one threatening to kill himself, as we soon find out in the next scene.
You have to take me back. You have to. I'm gonna kill myself, Heidi.
The other boys laughing at this prompts Cartman to double down on his suicide thing, basically taking it up as a cause he thinks needs attention. But I think it's really Cartman who wants the attention. Perhaps this is a commentary on other people in the real world who use suicide threats to get attention themselves. The following few minutes have a number of other setups happening pretty fast. Tweak decides to send cupcakes.
Stay focused. Stay committed.
Cartman asks PC Principal to help raise awareness for suicide prevention, but the school's already having an awareness week for distracted driving due to the recent deaths caused by people driving while on their cell phones. And we get to see Kim Jong-un receive the cupcakes in North Korea, which is a nice animation. And I believe this is the first time we see Kim Jong-un on the show. The South Park creators have a long, hilarious history of lampooning dictators and American enemies like this, like they did with Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, in Team America World Police. It really seems like no matter what happens, the president tries to make things
Core
worse
temperature
himself.
rising.
I really love seen Mr. Garrison come back as the surrogate Trump, even if it's just a picture of the tweets. Seeing him in that same place with a red spray can on it, fidget spinner, another cultural reference from the trend over the summer. The next day, Carmen performs a little rap song to try and raise awareness for suicide, which has a beautiful line at the end that references all the races and trans people.
Demonic threat reduced by 75%.
Another great update for the show's graphics and presentation. It's also funny to see South Park bring back this casual violence and death that used to be instead of killing humans they have to save in the golden seasons.
Accidental death in this service area? See Jessica and Human Resources for assistance.
Children trying to cross as they drive. In the end, South Park is commenting not only on the two supposed madmen duking it out in the public sphere, Trump and Kim Jong-un, but they're also tackling the problem of people being distracted by their phones, Twitter, and the never-ending feed in our current world dominated by the internet.
Your devotion to the
sites. They're also able to squeeze in a
is
little
the foundation to our success. With you, we will establish a new paradigm and move humanity into the future. Have you built up the
politics, the biting satire, and the
Your devotion to the new season is the foundation to our success. With you, we will establish a new paradigm and move humanity into the future. Have you filled out the UAC accidental death that has never been carried out? See Jessica and Human Resources for assistance.
Demonic presence reduced to minimum safe levels. Lockdown disengaged. Turbine room doors now open.
You guys are the best. You guys went above and beyond the rest. I love you so much for it. If anyone else wants to donate or join our Patreon crew, link in the description. Thanks again.
This time saying, I hope all children of America will stand with me and saying, go ahead and follow.
This video is brought to you by Catholics.com. Stand back in that.
Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're reviewing South Park again. This time it's the brand new third episode of season 21 called Holiday Special. This is not going to be your typical Christmas holiday special. No, not even Thanksgiving. This holiday special is about the less popular but recently more controversial Columbus Day.
Warning,
It was an SJW
core temperature reaching
about this
critical
holiday
levels.
for years. Canada even tried to change it to Indigenous Peoples Day. I think they may have changed it here in Los Angeles too, so perhaps that's why Matt and Trey, who are based here of course, maybe that's why they decided to tackle this issue in this week's episode. Let's check it out. First things started with the kids freaking out at school. Why? Because the school's trying to take away their only day off in the month of October, Columbus Day. Needless to say, the kids are pissed. In the next scene, there's a meeting with the parents at school. because they can not only burst the picture, they can also make modern lights look bad. You know, weird stuff just to get put away. And back to the South Park episode. How many people here found the Columbus statue because he was stand on the phone in time? They're still really upset about losing their day off at school. Of course, they just don't care about the holidays or the politics of their children. They just don't want to go to school that day. Then he reminds me of Kyle Bridges going to try and stop his dad. He's left to his own mother. And he says there's nothing crazy cool. He would never take a holiday away.
This all the time, but she's never tried to take the day off.
Now this is W coming with a little history of her mom. She's pretty much the stereotypical Jewish mom. She gets the feelings about everything. And even the main protester in the South Park movie just had her protesting Canada and bringing her mom activism to such a ridiculous degree. America started World War II. Really, all that makes it too funny.
The core temperature is now stabilized.
Holiday. These kids really want their day off of school. Next, Randy comes in to ask Stan to help him with his
The primary control room has been activated somewhere nearby. It could be Olivia.
And shame them for their supposedly murderous namesake. There's also a funny jab at the South Park critics in this. Here's Randy talking about being subtle and nuanced versus being over the top.
Dad, come on. We all get your point, but don't you think you're overdoing it?
You have to overdo it in today's society, Stan. You can't be nuanced and subtle anymore, else critics go, wow, what was the point of that?
Now that happened fast, but I think that's Trey and Matt's way of responding to their criticisms from the season's first 2 episodes, which were notably less over the top and in your face, much less so than this Randy episode. It's like how I mentioned in my review of the first episode, White People Renovating Houses. It didn't have a lot of laugh out loud, gut-wrenching laughs, but if you knew the references and thought about it a bit, it was a very intellectually funny show. But that stuff doesn't receive real well nowadays. Subtle and nuance doesn't go over like
Alpha
it used to,
4,
and perhaps South
0,
Park fans are just
2.
more interested in the over-the-top antics of Randy, as opposed to the biting, nuanced satire of the last few episodes.
Columbus Circle has been a landmark and photogenic intersection in New York City. What came as a surprise that some
All power rerouted to Argent Energy Tower.
She is trying to tear open the portal between our world and theirs.
You could not have saved them anyway.
Or in Randy's case, he's spreading around his own literal The reporter's next question happens quick too, but it says a lot.
So you're doing this because of indigenous peoples and their feelings. I don't care if people get indigenous. I'll crap all over their statues.
You'd think these Columbus protesters would be doing this to defend the honor of dressing up as Columbus himself. Pretty ironic, right?
The system won't allow anyone but Olivia to override it now. We will have to shut down the Argent Tower manually from the surface.
In the first place, think of all those anti-gay politicians and religious nutjobs who actually end up being closeted gays themselves, or people like Leonardo DiCaprio who speak out against global warming and burning fossil fuels while he rides around in his private jet. The other part I liked about this scene was Randy's defense. He says it was a different time when he dressed like that. Back then, Columbus was still cool, but back then isn't as far back as you think. We're talking about 2013 here. That's only 4 years ago, not even half a decade, but Randy isn't all wrong. 2013 feels like it was 100 years ago nowadays. With the way things keep changing so fast, all this PC, liberal, left-wing, SJW bullshit is really taking a hold for the worse now. Back then, in 2013, Columbus Day was fine, but now, for some reason, a few years later, it's not. I blame Obama. Next comes one of my favorite parts of this new season. Randy sadly watches TV, seemingly defeated after those pictures were...
Olivia is using the tower to drill a doorway into their world. You can prevent her from opening the gate by disabling the tower induction filters.
Turns out I'm not totally
Untethered.
I'm also part Northern Asian and even some Kurdish. I'm a victim of oppression.
This parody commercial is just perfectly done, I have to say. That really is what all these DNA test companies come down to. White people trying to claim a black or Indian heritage to get victim points. And that's exactly what Randy plans to do. This also reminds me of Lauren Southern when she did her DNA test and was all freaking out because she was part Spanish. Next, Randy of course wants those sweet victim points, so he decides to get the DNA test himself. But not before he invited everyone over for a party to witness it, and he even gets a Native American to show up, but not to join in on the festivities exactly. Randy wants the Indian for a special favor.
Cross-dimensional activity is a frequent occurrence outside of the base, so it is recommended that workers buddy up when journeying onto the Martian surface.
Obviously, Randy is trying to get Native American DNA into his mouth for his DNA test, but of course, things don't work out exactly as planned when a few scenes later, that idiot shows back up and is in love with Randy. And it shows up the second time playing love song.
Would you get out of here? And then he kissed me.
Next is my favorite part of the episode. Since Randy was getting rid of his Columbus gear when the native shows up, he looks pretty bad wearing some of it while he tries to kick the Indian off his property. What a fucking trip. In a last-ditch effort to save Columbus Day, the boys kidnap the school planner and force him to watch Randy dressed up as Columbus, although he does refuse at first.
Just shut up and watch when someone posts on their Instagram.
I most certainly will not. If you want me to look at the internet, I shall die first.
That's why we haven't transferred to VHS.
Oh, VHS is fine.
So that's a fake news reference, with the added twist of old people still trusting VHS tapes, for some reason. I also like the boys' masks in this scene, especially Cartman as the horse, which I think is a reference to the Hotline Miami game. That or some other videos online I saw with that creepy mask. Later, Randy goes so far as to try and break into the DNA testing place himself, but of course he's caught. Fortunately though, he gets his results and finds out he's part Neanderthal. And, well, Randy, he takes that as a victim point and really runs away with it.
You're telling me that my ancestors were raped and then eradicated by you maniacs!
In the end, Randy makes one final speech about the holiday situation. No, not that holiday.
And so, the second Monday of October will still be a holiday, but instead of Columbus Day, it will be for ripping on each other and tearing each other down. And we will call it Indigenous Peoples Day.
Randy, of course, doesn't really know what indigenous means, but we get the point. South Park is making fun of people who are getting all butthurt about Columbus Day lately. Many places are in fact changing that day to Indigenous People Day, and I think that's fucking lame. There's nothing wrong with celebrating our history, no matter how gray and dark things may look now in hindsight. Our past isn't exactly black and white, and that's okay. Overall, this was another great episode which will probably go over much better with fans and even casual viewers, since it is so over the top and direct. And I think that's exactly what Trey and Matt were going for today. What do you guys think? Was the episode the best of the season so far? Should Columbus Day be canceled in the real world? And what should South Park tackle next week? Comment your thoughts below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Special thanks to our sponsor catbeast.com. And I also want to remind you guys that this is the last week you can go to tradegeniusacademy.com and get half off on their courses on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Bob was a great guest last week and he's got a really good program over there. So you guys should really try and sign up before October 1st to get that bargain. Thanks again for watching. Good night, everybody.
I gotta go back to when we played as kids, but things changed. And that's the way it is. Come on. That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same.
You guys can all give up, but I'm not. Because in 1492, Columbus got us all a day off ski. With just 3 ships he sailed over, so we could have some me time in October.
This video is brought to you by catbeast.com. Design your own custom snapback to hats.
Hello and welcome back to South Park Explained on No Bullshit. Today we're covering South Park's latest episode called Sons of Witches, a Halloween episode, something they haven't done in quite a while. Another fan favorite returning this week is Mr. Garrison, playing the Donald Trump character, which hasn't been shown much since last season, and it was certainly a delight to see him come back to lampoon our now elected Commander-in-Chief. The episode covers him, Republicans, Halloween, and even a little Harvey Weinstein thrown in there, according to some. We're going to go over all that, the plots, and my favorite parts, so spoiler warnings ahead. If you haven't watched an episode, I highly recommend it. But if you have, let's go ahead and get started.
Going down south, I'm gonna have myself time.
Friendly faces everywhere, humble folks without temptation.
First, the episode starts with the spooky Halloween version of the intro and theme song. I didn't see it coming, and when I heard it, I got very surprised and excited. Halloween episodes have been a staple on South Park over the years. I can vividly remember the one with the band Korn from way back. And then there was also the one in 2012 where Stan's dad bought a Blockbuster.
Where is Turner and Hooch? Oh, I believe we have that over in the, Oh, I get it. Video stores are so old they have ghosts in them. Okay, thanks. I get it.
Lots of good Halloween memories here. This year in South Park, the dads are getting together for their annual Jack and Crack weekend, where they all dress up like witches, go out to the park, and get drunk and high. Seems innocent enough, except the crack. But there is a turd in the punch bowl. One guy at the party, Chip, decides to really mix things up by bringing a real magic spell book. After the guys agree to try it out without thinking twice, Chip unexpectedly becomes an actual witch.
Wickers. Stay far. Whoa. Oh, it burns! Okay, Chip, you might need to ease up on the crack there, buddy.
Green-faced, evil-laughed, and flying on a broomstick, the whole 9 yards. This causes Chip to quickly fly off to terrorize the town, exiting the scene. Meanwhile, the side story is Cartman and his girlfriend Heidi. They're getting ready to go to the annual pumpkin patch for Halloween festivities. Unfortunately for Eric, though, Heidi is taking forever to get ready, making him wait and be late to the event. Classic girl move, am I right?
Oh my God! Hurry now!
The next day, Randy Marsh wakes up hungover, while his wife explains the terrorizing Chip Witch, I guess, while he's been terrorizing the town all night. Despite that, Randy and the guys decide to carry on their week-long witch hunt. On the way, they discover they are all being lumped in with the bad witch Chip now, and they realize there's a bit of a witch thingy going on in town.
Sup, guys?
You know, just getting a bunch of shit for being witches.
I know, right? It's like there's one awful witch who wants to kill everybody, so now they're coming after all of us. This is like a witch thingy.
Like a witch pursuit thingy.
Obviously, they're getting at the phrase witch hunt, but the South Park guys can never quite get that actual phrasing down.
A witch,
It's a witch chase! Shoot 'em up!
yeah, that's what it is.
Now here's where a lot of people thought South Park was making jabs at the Harvey Weinstein situation again. Woody Allen himself said he was worried there would be a witch hunt in Hollywood after Weinstein got caught up in the sexual abuse scandal. And while this is an analogy I can see, I'm not sure if this is exactly what South Park was going for here. Perhaps, but there's also the stark parallels between this and the classic Arthur Miller play, The Crucible, which was made into a movie starring Daniel Day-Lewis. Legend. The Crucible told the story of the Salem witch trials, which took place in Massachusetts around 1692. And this is the same place where Chip said he got his spell book in the beginning.
I mean it. I got this spell book last month. Got it in Salem, Massachusetts. They say it's real. Like real how?
In truth, I think South Park left this part open. There are lots of witch hunts that have happened throughout history, and there are multiple examples which it could be referencing in recent news. Perhaps it's Weinstein too, but I think that's a little too vague here, and I think a lot of people just assume it was Weinstein since the story is still so fresh in the news. My best guess for this is supported later by the episode's ending, which we'll get to soon. Let's continue.
Don't you think we should stay on the main roads, Eric? This seems like a bad place to be right now.
Don't worry, Heidi. This is the fastest way to the party.
Back to Cartman and Heidi. With the witch in town, Cartman sees an opportunity to get rid of his annoying girlfriend. He decides to have them dress up as Hansel and Gretel, walk through the woods, and lure the witch out. Well, this works, and the witch captures Heidi, just like Cartman had planned. But when Cartman tells this story to the police afterwards, he obviously plays the victim, acting like he had no clue this would happen. When one police officer questions Cartman for dressing up like characters who were captured by a witch, while an actual witch is around in the town, the other cop quickly scolds him for blaming the victim. Victims are never wrong or responsible, right? This sounds pretty familiar since we just went through all this #MeToo stuff last week. I was just saying the same thing in my video about it a few days ago. Unfortunately, sometimes the victim is partly responsible, especially if you're putting yourself in risky situations over and over again. That's on you, and it looks like South Park agrees here. That's why they made this joke. And I love how the cop breaks the fourth wall and apologizes for victim blaming here.
And you didn't stop at all to think that what you were doing might attract the witch?
Excuse me? Are you actually trying to blame the victim here?
No, I'm just saying that if there's a big fat witch around, maybe you shouldn't walk through the woods dressed as Hansel and Gretel.
Whoa, not cool, Rick, not cool.
I will have your badge, sir!
Sorry, folks, sorry.
Classic. Next, the other boys come up with a way to stop the real witch. They think to call another South Park guy, who's in the witch club too, but hasn't been for that long. Cut to the White House. Yep, it's Mr. Garrison playing the Trump surrogate.
Cool, man. Did you build that big wall you were gonna build?
Don't be a dick, Butters. Are you just calling this shit on my Halloween?
And here's where things solidified for me. The witches are Republicans. They think Garrison hasn't been around for a while because Trump hasn't been in the Republican Party for very long. The Republicans are witches because they're so vilified in the media and in public opinion. The evil witch represents the worst of the Republican side. They're racist, they're sexist, they're homophobes. The alt-right are KKK members. These are the real witches of the Republicans, the ones who make all the others look bad. Think Richard Spencer and how they use him to vilify everyone on the right. He's the closest thing to a real witch on the right. The left will use him to slam the whole party. Amy just followed me on Twitter last week after I made a video about it. But don't worry, I'm not racist.
Well, the thing is, Mr. President, one of the guys did a spell and took off a bunch of children, and he's gonna eat them all.
Let me guess, Chip Duncan. Oh, that guy was always such a douche.
That's what I really think this whole witch hunt storyline is all about. But then again, it could be other things too. I just think the way they add Trump into it, it's pretty clear it's mostly about Republicans. In the end, the town gathers at the Ross Dress for Less for one final confrontation with the witch. After trying to reason with him fails, Garrison shows up in Air Force One to save the day. He quickly and effortlessly shows the witch what real power looks like.
You want to see real power? All right, take the shot.
And just like that, in the blink of an eye, the threat in South Park is neutralized. The tension is over and the witches all jump onto Air Force One for another night of Jack and Crack. All in all, this was another hit episode for South Park. The jokes all landed and the references were spot on. The holiday theme was great and very well done. We even got the return of Mr. Garrison as Trump, which was peppered in at the end. Not too much or anything. There's definitely not as much politics here as last season. They didn't overdo it. This time it was just enough.
All ready to trick or treat?
Yeah, no, I've been ready for a couple hours now.
Cool, I just want to put on some lip gloss. Do these stockings go with this outfit? I thought maybe I should use the red one. Is it cold out? Do you think I should put a hoodie on over this?
What do you guys think? Was this South Park Halloween special like this? Was the witch hunt a parody of the Weinstein scandal in Hollywood? Or was it the Republicans and Trump? Or maybe it was just a little of both? Comment your thoughts below and thanks for watching No Bullshit. A couple of announcements before we go. First, the Basecamp video is coming very soon, in the next week or two. But before that, we are of course having our own Halloween special with YouTube's Barry. On Halloween next week, October 31st, we will be doing streams on both our channels, so look out for that. And you can start commenting your questions and topic ideas for that day below. Start your comment with Ask Barry or on Halloween, talk about this. And I'll start saving your ideas for the big day. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until then, have a great weekend, everybody. And thanks again for watching. See y'all next time. Bye-bye. One more thing, I want to give a special thanks to these amazing Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. You guys went above and beyond the rest, and I love you so much. If anyone else wants to donate or join our Patreon crew, link in the description. Thanks again. Go on to patreon.com/nobullshit and sign up today. Even just $1 per month really helps. Think about it like this. We have over 200,000 subscribers here on YouTube. So if I just get 1% of you guys to hop on Patreon for $1, we will not only pass our reach goal and get that movie, we'll also be able to not worry about ads and getting shut down here on YouTube. I really love doing these videos full time for you guys. The best way to help with that is to sign up on Patreon. Thanks again for watching our new episode. See y'all next time.
We're all on the same side of paradigm. Let's all stick together. Let's try. When things are going bad and there's people you need to confront, just be sure it doesn't turn into a witch pursuit thing.
This video is brought to you by catbeast.com. Design your own custom snapbacks and hats.
Hello and welcome back to South Park Explained on No Bullshit. Today we're talking about the latest episode, Hummels and Heroin, which addresses both the U.S. criminal justice policies and the country's ongoing opioid epidemic. We're going to go over the plot, the references, and my favorite parts, so spoiler warnings ahead. Let's get started.
They got me locked up in here. They got me locked up in here. And I'm sitting doing hard time.
This episode is the first this season to not really attack any current mainstream issues. It's a kind of ancillary episode that addresses some side issues people may not be thinking about too much. Instead of tackling something like Charlottesville, Trump, North Korea, Columbus Day, or Facebook, the most topical news events of the day, this episode chooses to cover the heroin problem in America in its own interesting way by having Stan visit his grandpa's nursing home, which doubles as a front for old people to sell their medications onto the black market. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to the first scene. The kids start out at a birthday party for the new character Marcus. Performing at the event is our first pop culture reference, none other than Chuck E. Cheese himself, the mascot and namesake for the Chuck E. Cheese children's entertainment centers and restaurants. I used to go to parties at these places as a kid, and apparently they're still around, but Chuck E. Cheese in South Park has a little problem. He can't quite perform too well. He appears to be high on painkillers, as one of the parents notes.
Thanks for telling Marcus's birthday.
What's wrong with him?
Can't you tell he's high on painkillers?
Shortly after this failed performance, Chucky falls and dies in front of all the kids, and Marcus, the birthday boy, takes it particularly rough. When the medic asks the cop how Chuck E. Cheese is getting all these drugs, they cut straight to the source: Shady Acres, South Park's nursing home. Here's where the big overarching theme begins. Nursing homes are shown to be virtual prisons for these old people. They're stuck in there, living in little cell-like rooms, eating gross, sloppy food in cafeterias, and apparently they're also selling drugs. And this is only the beginning of this analogy. Just wait. Next, Stan shows up to the nursing home with a gift for his grandpa. After he's patted down like he's entering prison, we discover the gift is a Hummel figurine, a small porcelain statue from Germany, which apparently old people are obsessed with collecting. After getting his gift, the grandpa insists Stan deliver this knitted pillow for him, otherwise the head bitch of the nursing home will be none too pleased. Stan begrudgingly agrees, and in the next scene we see him deliver the pillow to another mascot-like children's party performer character. Joined by the other boys, they all rightly find this exchange rather weird. Unbeknownst to the kids, the pillow of course contains some kind of drugs, opioid pills, which the old people trade for other Hummel figurines. What's cool about this scene is we finally get to see our four main South Park boys together again. Looks like this is going to be a story for them this episode, a dynamic we haven't seen very much this season, or for a while. Usually you get a lot of Randy episodes, or Cartman only episodes, or Cartman and Butters.
Students, faculty, and staff, today we are facing an epidemic of catastrophic proportions.
The following scene brings us to Marcus giving a presentation about this situation. Apparently, Chuck E. Cheese wasn't the only children's entertainer to overdose in South Park. Multiple others have died from similar drug-related issues. Even the one from the scene before has since died, which shows the boys that their pillow was probably behind it. And Marcus appears to be very determined to stop this epidemic once and for all. Now, with all that set up, to be honest, there's not as much that needs to be explained in this episode. It's really not as layered or intricate as the previous ones this season, and that's okay. It can be good, in fact. It's a good mix-up from the previous episodes for sure. Some would say it's the best episode this season so far. Probably the people who aren't as big of fans of topical humor and the social commentary. There's also the fact that this episode really does bring us back to old-fashioned South Park. I know I said this before this season, but it appears the creators Matt and Trey are trying to bring it back more and more each week. Maybe they're listening to comments and criticisms about the episodes. One notable callback today is the fact that this is a Stan-focused episode, something which really hasn't happened in a while. Couple that with the one-off nature of this episode, plus the ancillary topical humor, as opposed to the head-on mainstream news focus, and this is a real winner for everybody. It's the best of both worlds, so to speak. I recommend everyone watch it, and no, despite the rumors in the comment section, I'm not being paid by South Park or anything like that. It might just seem that way because I'm such a big fanboy. I'll admit it, but that's not a bad thing for a video